Okay, I first met Colin and his amazing and talented wife Renata about a year ago in a meeting of the writers group that I've been attending in New York for years. I was immediately drawn to their intelligence, their wit. We became very fast friends. Originally from Northern Ireland, no shit if you've heard him speak, he's a longtime resident of New York by way of the Bronx. A Bronx girl myself. You know, that definitely would explain the kinship, I think. He's been a contributor to the New York Times, the Irish Voice, Ratapal, say that for me, Ratapalax, a cutting-edge literary magazine. His play, Father Who, enjoyed a successful run at the McCalla Theatre Company in the before-mentioned Bronx. And while awaiting the release of his Random House memoir, Orangutan, the life changes that was sure to occur with it, he and his wife, Renata, amazingly, generously, patiently read my entire manuscript and copiously took notes. And for that, I will forever be in your debt. Okay, I want to tell you that this man has flown in all the way from New York, and that is no lie, to read for us today. He is a friend, a brilliant writer. The fact that he is alive to tell his tale is beyond belief. The life of debauchery that that man led, and the fact that a woman like Renata would marry him, but he's quite the guy, and I call him Monkey Boy. Please welcome Colin Broderick.
Thank you, Vicki. Oh, you're hooking me up.
I'm hooking you up.
I got a microphone.
Yeah. Don't tell Renata I hooked you up.
A life of debauchery that led me to this room. So stay in school, kids. This is a drinking memoir. I arrived in New York in 1988 and spent most of that time working construction, drinking, and writing. And I was going to read a masturbation story, but... Yeah? Okay. All right. Why not?
We don't.
I didn't want to get you all excited. 138. Okay, people are getting excited already. Yeah. So I had a drinking binge for the first 4 or 5 years I was here. I quit drinking when I was 23. Got married and divorced a couple of times. But in one of these marriages, my wife at the time was crazy to have a baby, and I didn't want one. And we had to go through the whole specialist thing. So that's where that story's from. After much debate, I was summoned to the office of the Creator in Westchester. He wanted to see me alone. I was totally against it at the time. It's a difficult decision to make even if you want to have a baby, but if you're really hoping not to have one, it's hell. The waiting room at the clinic was like a nursery. 4 or 5 women were there reading fertility books. Surprisingly enough, most of them had brought their small children. Maybe that's not surprising. It was surprising to me that they had children and they wanted more. I searched the kids' faces as they played to see if any of them bore any resemblance to one another. I was distrustful of the doctor with his little baby factory. What if he was the father of all these little monsters? How hard could it be? I was summoned into his office, and I was surprised to find a Woody Allen-type character behind a humongous desk in a corner office. Maybe he just made the desk appear humongous because he was so small. He did look a lot like Woody Allen, glasses and all, only much sharper. He had the appearance of a man who scrubbed himself clean 50 times a day. He had an unnatural glow about him. He had the aura of a man who created babies for a living. I understood now. This was why these women worshipped him. I crossed my legs uneasily. Well, Mr. Broderick, he said, leaning back in his throne, clasping his hands, are we ready to make a baby? Listen, you seem like a really nice guy, I said, but I'm married. Right. Right, he said with a straight face. I guess he'd heard them all before. What we need to do today is take some tests, and then we'll reschedule another appointment for next week, and we can sit down with the results and discuss our options. How does that sound to you? Sounds great, I lied. Okay, so if you'll just go back to the waiting room, he said, getting up and walking me to the door of his office. One of the nurses will be with you in a moment. Thanks. Nurses test. This was beginning to sound like it might be fun. I went back to the waiting room and read an article about breastfeeding. 2 of the women in the waiting room now had their nannies with them. There must have been 7 or 8 well-dressed, attractive, wealthy white women and a handful of little gap babies. I tried not to dwell on the fact that I was the only man in the room. The nurse behind it, like today a little bit. The nurse behind the desk stood up from behind the counter and called my name, glancing around the waiting room as if there was a possibility that one of these women had the first name Colin. I approached as she held out a clear plastic cup with a blue lid. Here you go, she said. Now I understood. She was just trying to attract everybody's attention. I'm going to need a sample of your sperm. You can just bring it back to me when you're finished. When I'm finished? Yes, you can use the bathroom here on the right. There should be a magazine in there if you need some help. I see. I wanted to ask her if maybe she could speak up a little, as I was quite sure there had to be a few women in Staten Island who hadn't quite caught all that. I took a quick look around the room full of ladies. It was obvious that everybody had heard, but they were polite enough not to stare. The door to the bathroom was just to the right of the receptionist's workstation, just as she'd said, nice, discreet. I sauntered on in as casually as I could manage and locked the door behind me. I set the plastic cup on the sink and sat down on the toilet. I could still hear the women talking in the waiting room. Their conversation seemed forced now, a little louder even, as if they were trying to cover for me. They were sitting less than 10 feet away, and now I was supposed to jack off into a cup and then go back out there and hand my man juice to the nurse in front of everybody. I considered just packing it in right there. I didn't want to do this in the first place. I really didn't want to have a baby. I was here because I wanted peace and quiet in my home so that I could get some writing done. If I didn't get this done, I'd never hear the end of it. I'd never get any writing done. Maybe I was just being selfish, but this just didn't feel natural. What the hell was I doing in there? What was I doing? Oh my God, now I'd wasted time obsessing about it, and all those women were out there still waiting for me to perform. I pictured them out there glancing at their watches, whispering to each other, straining to hear any trace of me manhandling myself. I'd really gotten myself into it this time. I had to get busy. Sure enough, there on the shelf above the toilet was a magazine. I took it down and was turned off right away by the fact that it had lost its cover. This was not going to be easy. The corners of the pages were dog-eared. This little puppy had been through the mill. I could storm out, waving the magazine, scream, "This is an outrage. You expect me to work with this?" Like a French actor with a bad script, I could fling it onto the coffee table in the middle of the small waiting room and storm out the door, muttering something about how this was an insult to my talent. I was wasting more time. I had to get it together. How long had I been in there already? What if someone out there was waiting to use the bathroom? What if I couldn't perform? I had to escape. There was no window. I eyed the small air vent in the ceiling. If I could just manage to somehow dislocate both my shoulders and crush my pelvis with the toilet seat, I just might be able to squeeze through it. Focus, focus. You're in here now. Deal with it. The only way out is in your pants. Get it out and get on with it. There you go. I washed up and gave myself a grin in the mirror. Who's the man? You're the man. No, you're the man. I waltzed out with my little cup. I was James Bond twirling a martini glass, shaken, not stirred. All the ladies seemed a little bit more relaxed. We'd done it. Was it good for you, ladies? I handed Miss Moneypenny the cup. She seemed happy with my work. I suppressed a smile as she handed me a card with my mission for next week. Did she just flutter her eyelashes? I felt like maybe we should all have a cigarette or something before I left.